Hello and welcome to this short lesson on implementing logic or control structures with Airtable. There is another video in which we did the same exercise using Bubble, but in this one we're going to use Airtable. Now, taking your mind back to the lesson, we drew up a very simple flowchart when we were thinking about how to put together business requirements of the steps you take to make a cup of coffee. We kind of jokingly assumed that that would contain milk, and we kind of hard-coded it in. But what happens if the customer doesn't want milk? Again, that would have been a mistake with our requirements, so we do need to think through all of these things. Let's assume now that we are going to give the customer the option to choose milk with their coffee or not. This is how we're going to implement it in Airtable. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new table. So this was the area we were working on earlier on when we were looking at data structures, or in fact later on. So let's just call this drinks. Now I'm just going to make this an index field so that we don't have to worry about putting values in there. I'm going to make it auto number. Now this has got nothing to do with the exercise, it's just to make things easy. Right, I'm going to call this drink. And let's just make this a single select, and we're going to give the user an option to select coffee only. We're a coffee shop, we haven't offered tea yet. I'm going to change this one here to be with milk, and we're going to make that a true false value, so we're looking for a checkbox. Save that, and then finally we're going to create an output field here, and it'll be you ordered, for example. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make this a formula, and this is where we're going to build our logic. So you can see we've got a little formula editor up here, where this is a little more complex than Bubble. For example, we're going to do a nested formula because we need to check for two values. We need to check to see that they have in fact ordered a drink, and we need to check that they have ordered it with or without milk. So first of all, we're going to do an if formula. So very similar to Excel if you're familiar with that. Open brackets. Now we need to check, let's start off with drink. You can see it's popped up the field drink. So if drink is equal to coffee, that's our first test. In fact, we want to make sure it's not equal to coffee. So if it's anything else, if it's blank or if it's tea, so we're going to say if it's not equal to coffee, then we want to output a value of nothing. But if it is equal to coffee, then we want to check and see if there's milk. So another if, open the bracket, and then we're going to say if milk, with milk is equal to 1, which is true, then we want an output value of you ordered coffee with milk. And if that isn't true, we want to say you ordered coffee without milk. Right, let's see, there we got the right amount of brackets. Let's save that. Okay, so it seems to be working. There's no drink selected, there's nothing selected here. So let's just go and say we've ordered coffee, and we want it with milk. So there we can see coffee with milk. Now the next person comes along and orders coffee, but they don't want milk. So you can see the formula has now output you ordered coffee without milk. Obviously then there could be coffee with milk, and so it goes. So now that formula, for all the rows you add, that formula will apply, and it's using these two fields to calculate that output. So let's just take a look at that field again. Oops, apologies, I meant to edit the field to see what this formula's done. So first we're saying if the drink is not equal to coffee, then do nothing, and that's when we had nothing in there. So the reverse is true if it does have coffee in the field, i.e. that's false. And the with milk column is ticked, then output the text you ordered coffee with milk, comma, that means not true, so the milk is unchecked, you ordered coffee without milk. So a simple example of a nested statement. You can make this multiple levels deep. It does get more complex, but you can see fairly basic with an Excel type formula to build in some database logic. So there you have it done with Airtable.